Now we have learned a little bit about the origins of the human rights model. Travis has gone to work with a different mindset. For the first time in ages, he enjoyed his shift and truly felt glad to be working as a support worker. Travis' participant benefited from his new outlook. The next day, Travis and Sarah meet once more to continue their discussion. Now we will learn about the different models of care and a brief example of how those models look in practice. We will identify the main differences between the social model and human rights model.
Nice to see you again, Travis. How was work yesterday?
Great to see you too, Sarah. It was excellent. We had a great time together. I'm excited to learn more. I can see how this is the best approach for my work and how it improves the lives of others.
I'm so glad that you have developed this mindset. This type of open and positive way of thinking is necessary to be able to support your participants.
Awesome. What's the next step? What are we going to learn?
I'll tell you about some models used previously. For example, the medical model. The medical model focuses on correcting issues through medical intervention. When visiting medical doctors, the care Mark receives is impacted by the way in which his disability is perceived. The model looks at the person with disabilities and be a dependent of third-party assistance to live. It's time to educate others in order to create awareness on how important these changes are. Treat everyone you interact with in your life, thinking of them as humans first. That is until I switched over to TB Disability Services. Take some time to think about your personal values and how they align with the social and human rights models of care.
I don't really understand. Do you have an example for it?
Yes, of course. Let's say a young man named Mark was involved in a car accident. The crash resulted in a lower limb amputation. He now uses a motorized scooter to get around locally and drives a modified van. He has a secondary health condition of type 2 diabetes. When visiting around medical doctors, the care Mark receives is impacted by the way in which his disability is perceived. His endocrinologist sees Mark's physical disability as something that prevents him from living a healthy life at all, and therefore does not recommend the same lifestyle changes that they would for a person without a disability, like diet and an exercise program.
Wow, I can't believe that type of model was used. It would feel wrong to use nowadays.
Exactly. For its time, the medical model was initially well received, but it lost popularity very quickly due to questionable processes. It became outdated.
The next model you mentioned was the charitable model, right?
Great memory, Travis. You are paying attention. The charitable model came about in the late 1970s as an improvement to the medical model. This model looks at the person with disabilities as someone in need and donate assistance for the person with disabilities. This person will depend on the donors for assistance. Would you like an example, Travis?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's take the previous example with Mark, and his primary care doctor was not able to help him. Travis decides to look for external help. Travis finds a group that offer him to raise money in order to cover his medical expenses. Mark then realizes that he does not want to depend on others to access services. He would like to do it on his own terms.
At least is a small improvement from the previous model, but it really enforces the disability labels.
That's true. We need to set a new standard. A model that is respectful and appropriate. One that improves upon all these methods from the past. Now for the most current model, the social model. The social model was developed in the early 1980s. This model focuses on barriers facing people with disabilities instead of concentrating on the diagnosis and limits of the person with a disability. In this model, a person's activities are limited not by the impairment or condition, but by the environment, and barriers are consequences of a lack of social organization.
Does that mean that today we are using a model that was developed in the 1980s? That was 40 years ago.
Now you see why it's essential to change the model of care. It's time to educate others, so to create awareness of how important these changes are. Attitude of the way we approach the needs of people living with disability. This is what brought about the creation of human rights model. The human rights model needs to be essential to all policies and practices and become the new standard.